What is the constraints-led approach and how does it transform your Jiu Jitsu? Thank you for joining me on this, my journey into the constraints-led approach for BJJ. My name is Sam Battlefield, and today we're going to answer that question by comparing today's CLA class with the traditional approach. To avoid the inevitable, my school doesn't do that comments, I'm referring to the traditional schools, and they are out there because I've trained at 10 plus academies that all do it, with variation of course. To start off with, the CLA class did our normal warm-up, which we call boxing tag. Then we moved into a 2-on-1 connection with the goal to put the opponent onto 3 points of contact with the ground. By the time my CLA class has finished these two active and live games against someone that's resisting them, the traditional class has done running while waving your arms around, running while waving your arms around backwards, running while waving your arms around in opposite directions, running backwards, side to side running but lower to the ground, side to side in and side to side out running, crisscross running, double leg shrimps, single leg shrimps, forward shrimps or inserts, forward rolls, backwards rolls, bear crawls, sit-outs, scorpions, gorillas, crocodile crawls, penetrating steps, cartwheels, break falls. The list goes on. During this, the CLA class is moving on to the next portion of the class, which is controlling the opponent. In this case, it'll be something simple where both people are holding their buckles so they can't use their hands, and they're in a side control position with the win condition that the person on top, as soon as their head or shoulders hits the mat, then they lose. A couple of the guys today called it the salmon dance. Now this might seem to be creating some bad habits.
There is no bad habit.
But through bringing intentions such as this to the control game, we're actually bringing attention to a portion of the control game that is often overlooked, especially by people like myself in this completely undoctored video. At this stage, as a trad guy, you've probably been given a little bit of reprieve by your coach and been allowed to grab some water. Or if you're one of those guys at the extremely traditional schools, then you're probably not allowed to get water because for some reason, despite the science, your coach believes that dehydration builds character. For the trad coach, it's at this point in time that they shine. You're pumped and ready, you're 25 minutes into class, your heart's going, now you're ready to learn some Jiu Jitsu. And thus begins a 3 to 10 minute instructional where you're given step by step and being told how you should feel while creating a technique. Let's just go with today, De La Riva sweeps. Do you remember all of it?
Fuck no!
But of course, you're going to try it out in a drill. You're going to try and remember every single step. You think that there's one detail that's going to be the actual fucking detail that finally makes this sweep work. You're going to drill it over and over again. And if you're really keen and you really believe that drillers are killers, maybe you employ progressive resistance, whatever that means. During this portion of the CLA class, we've moved on to the main focus of the curriculum, and in this case, it's open guard. Throughout the week, it became clear to me that there was a linchpin that was missing to a whole heap of the open guard stuff that we'd been doing, and it was a behavior that wasn't quite emerging. People were making great connections up front, but then they were pulling them past their first line of defense, the feet. So I developed a game where the goal was just to put the soles of the feet on the person on top as much as possible. The person on top was to try and get chest to chest, but they were only allowed to use one hand. In hindsight, this game didn't need that stipulation, and the task would have been much better defined if I had just said that the person on top is wearing a lab coat and we've got to put on as many dirty footprints on that lab coat as we could. And I want to give a shout out to Brienne from the Discord for giving us that idea. While this is happening, the trad guys are being shown a second variation or a second technique or a second part of the sequence. It all feels so exciting knowing that you're completely forgetting the first part of the class, and that must mean you're learning, right? The last game of the CLA session and the traditional session looks very similar. It's going to look like situational sparring. In the CLA game, we're starting with one hand on the ankle and one foot on the hip, and the goal is to put that person on top, on their ass, on their hip, or that we just stand up. And of course, the person on top, they're going for a chest-to-chest pin. The result of this game, with the attention being brought to the feet in the previous game, meant that people were getting put on their ass left, right, and center. The traditional guys, well, they get to start in their situational sparring. They get to start in full De La Riva, everything locked up, everything in place, more connections than the CLA guys. But immediately it crumbles because the higher belts, they know what's coming, and so do the lower belts. So they're ready to disengage, get rid of the hooks, get rid of those feet, and go. And so that situational sparring becomes, 2 to 3 30-second attempts in a whole hour, and you may not see De La Riva again for another 6 months. How good do you reckon that retention of all those details is going to be? Meanwhile, my guys with CLA have been problem solving using a live opponent with situations that are very similar to the De La Riva, and I am 100% certain that they've been going for upwards of 35 minutes in these live scenarios. So let's recap. Trad guys have had their heart rate blow up in the first 20 minutes doing zero jiu-jitsu. They'll sit round cooling down while they listen to the guru give them the secret sauce for the next 20 to 30 minutes. They'll do a little bit of drilling. They'll attempt to put it into play for between, let's say, to be honest, about a minute to 10 minutes. At the most of the time in a situational sparring sort of portion of a trad class, you're waiting in line as you go around and around. So do you want to know how CLA is going to transform your jiu-jitsu? Just add up all that mat time every day of the week, and then by the end of the first year, third year, and 10 years, think how far along they'll be. If you think that I'm wrong, I'd love to have you on. Hit me up at battlefieldsgrappling.com.au. The rest of you, like, comment, subscribe.